All right, here we are at the beginning of the second part of the Vallejo metal colors test. Hopefully everything you've seen so far, which has really been all about surface prep and getting ready to actually use this stuff, has kept you interested and you are ready to tune in for the rest of it and see exactly how this stuff turns out. Okay, here we are about 24 hours later after all of this was sprayed yesterday. And now we're going to get to the fun parts. We're going to start doing things to this paint because that's where the rubber meets the road. Now, I posted some photos of it online this morning, and comment was made that it just looked like shiny gray paint. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. That's not an unfair comment. Most of these metallic paints, whether they be all clad, whether they be AK's True Metal Paste, this stuff, they are all just pretending to be aluminum. Just to give you a real sort of frame of reference, let me show you this. This is ultra bright bare metal foil chrome, and it is in fact the real stuff. And there you go. That's what it looks like compared to, say, the chrome on this horizontal stabilizer right here. So look, you can see that it's a close approximation, or maybe not so close depending on your definition, but that's just the way it is. That's just life with paints trying to be aluminum or any other metal surface. I find that metals like steel are much more easily impersonated with paint, but aluminum is a tough one. And it's also difficult to photograph sometimes because, with the reflectivity and the basically 50% gray that you're dealing with, a lot of digital camera sensors don't understand it very well. So it's good when you can look at it in 3 dimensions like this, and, also with some sunlight that I've got coming in here through the blinds, so that you can get a better idea of just how much reflectivity is actually there. But at any rate, one of the questions has been, is this stuff buffable? And one of the other reviewers says that it is, and he basically just rubbed on it with a soft cloth. So let's just see here real quick. Let's just take a little bitty section of it here on this wingtip and see if rubbing it has any effect. I honestly do not expect that it's going to, but it's worth a try. So again, I've rubbed that with this soft cloth and I see no change whatsoever. But since we're busy rubbing on things, look here, I just happen to have a piece of one of my favorites, 4/0 steel wool. Let's see what happens when we rub it with that. I like that it's not just flying off of there. It seems to be about as resistant to steel wool as most other acrylic paints, but you can see it's definitely coming off. And again, that doesn't surprise me much either. And that doesn't really do anything to modify the reflectivity or the finish of it. So again, I just don't think that with an acrylic paint you're ever going to get much more than what you get when you spray it. You just have to decide if that's what you can live with. I do know that there are metallizers out there, like the Mr. Metallizers from Guns, that are allegedly buffable, but I've never tried those. I have also used the AK True Metal a little bit, And I can tell you that while it is most definitely buffable, and you do get a better shine with it when you do buff it, that the disadvantage is the property that makes it buffable comes from the fact that it's basically a wax paste. It smells a lot like shoe polish in the tube, and I think that it probably is a lot like shoe polish. And so yeah, you can rub it around and get a higher shine from it by buffing it, but it is also very fragile, and you will find that you can very quickly buff it right off with your fingers just from handling the parts. And so far, I've been real impressed with this Vallejo stuff in that it has stood up to handling that I know would have been an issue with some other things. That's a good thing. Now, let's get to the next most important thing, and that is masking. And you can see that I've got myself a roll of Tamiya tape right here, and we are going to just do some masking. And a lot of people like to detack the Tamiya tape by sticking it to their back of their hand or their forehead or whatever, and that's great, but ain't nobody got time for that. We're going to see if this stuff can put up with being masked straight away with no handicapping whatsoever, whatever you want to call it. We're not gonna try and make it any easier on this stuff, because look, really, if it's good paint, you should be able to mask it without having to worry about all of that. So anyway, I'm going to do several different things. I'm going to mask with some Tamiya tape. I'm going to mask with this regular old household painter's masking tape. And then we're going to go for the acid test. This is 3M vinyl fine line tape, which is pretty much the standard for, custom painters who do a lot of stripes and curves and things like that. And this stuff is super gnarly. It's the stickiest tape I've ever run across. So we're going to see how it works out. And I even have, let me get back over here in my stash of stuff. I even happen to have an unused mask from something else I've been working on that we're going to try out. We'll just peel this one off of here right away. This is low-tack vinyl masking film, which is, like it says, is supposed to be less sticky than the normal stuff. So we'll see how that works out. We'll just find a good spot to put this. How about here on the bottom, right here in the middle of some of this aluminum. We'll just stick that right down there and get it good and stuck in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick all this masking stuff to this thing, and then we'll talk about what I'm going to paint on there afterwards. Okay, we are all set up here. You can see that I have got the little test mule thoroughly masked up in a bunch of sections. And I've got some paints already shaken up and opened and ready to go here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is start out with this gunmetal gray. This is one that we haven't seen yet. And I need to paint some parts for real. And I have chosen this color for those. And those parts are sitting right here. So that's going to be the first item of business, is to blow a little color on them. And that should be pretty straightforward. And then I'm going to just get right into spraying each of the colors that I've got laid out here on the bench mule. All right, that gets us through the remainder of the colors that I got in my test samples. You saw that I sprayed the steel, the jet exhaust, the copper, the gunmetal gray, and then that I used some of the duralumin on the gun covers here, and then did a little bit of kind of a mixture of duralumin and steel on this. And that really wasn't intentional. That was just because, as you could see, I was basically not even cleaning out the spray gun in between each color, which you can sort of get away with. I think there was a little bit of a reaction with the steel color, which you might have seen right there, which ends up looking kind of neat, but again, not something that you necessarily want to take to the bank. Now, one of the things that everybody wants to know is, how does this Vallejo metallic compare to the industry standard All-Clad 2 and another new kit on the block, which is the AK Extreme Metal. And you may have noticed over here in the corner of the last shot that I have some Extreme Metal dark aluminum and one of my bottles of All-Clad regular aluminum. And we are now going to answer that question. I'm going to spray the AK dark aluminum right here, because that'll be next to the dark aluminum that's already down there. And then I'm going to spray some of the regular aluminum All-Clad on the top side, where you can compare it to some of the other aluminum from Vallejo. But first, we're going to get this good and shaken up. I'm going to throw a little brass nugget in there and make sure this is well stirred up before we get started. All right, so everything is all sprayed up and I think dry enough to handle, so we're going to go ahead and get to the really important part of the masking test, which is, of course, taking the masking tape off. So let's just get started with that. And of course, we have to do the standard, stupid thing and just yank it off like that. And you can see that it did not survive well at all. Just for reference, this is the regular old household masking tape. That paint has been drying for 24 hours, and this surface right here is aqua gloss that's been polished to pretty much a mirror finish. So you can see the first masking test is a total fail. But look, that's not the way you're supposed to do it. If you rip your masking tape off like that, then you get what's coming to you. All right, let's try it a little bit more appropriately, where we pull the tape slowly back parallel to the surface, and there we can see no issue at all. That went just fine. Now let's go over here to the other side and do the same thing. Let's pull that off. Everything's going fine there. So that's all the household masking tape there. Now let's take this piece of Tamiya 1/4 inch tape off and see how things go. No problem, not bad at all. And keep in mind that none of this stuff was de-tackified, you know, however you want to call it. It all went on there straight up because this is supposed to be a tough test. Now, let's see if we can peel off this vinyl masking film. Kind of tough for me to get my fingernails on there, but there we go. And again, I'm peeling that just as gently as possible, and you can see all of that turned out just fine. No real issues there. Okay, now let's flip back over to the other side. Getting masking tape stuck all over everything. And let's take this off and see how we did there. So again, peeling it straight back to parallel to the surface and at an angle if possible. And that's all doing just wonderfully. So there we go. We got our little extra dark stainless steel panels around the exhaust stacks on the little Mustang. Alright, this is another piece of the household tape right here. Let's get rid of that. Nope, and see, even though I pulled it gently, it yanked that stuff right off. So, if nothing else, one thing you can learn from this is be very careful with cheap painter's masking tape from the hardware store, because, and I've found this out in other situations as well, that sometimes it seems to not want to stick at all, and sometimes it does that to you. So be very careful with unknown masking tape. We all know the Tamiya tape works pretty good. So let's go ahead and take the rest of it off and unmask our gun bay door panels here and see how that looks. Oh, see, I pulled a chunk of tape right there. But again, I did not de-tackify any of this. And there comes some more paint right there. And the surface that this is on, just to remind you, is this is just all-clad aqua gloss that's sprayed on and not polished. So not quite as mirror finished as the stuff on the bottom of the wing, but still relatively smooth. So we definitely had some peelage there. Now this will be ugly. This purple tape, as I was saying before, is 3M's fine line tape, and I expect it to be really destructive, and you can see it's already popping pieces off right there. This stuff you have to be extremely careful with, even on non-metallic paints. I mean, look at that. Even just, you know, peeling real slow. So, there you go. So, that, I would say, is a pretty conclusive on the masking part of the test. It'll do okay, but you should be very careful and not assume anything. Now let's look at a couple of colors. You can see all the darker colors that I sprayed. But let's compare with the other brands. Okay, so I would challenge anybody who didn't know the difference to tell me which of these two horizontal stabilizers was all clad. You guys watched me spray it, so you know that it's the one here on the right-hand side. But how would you know that if I didn't tell you? I told somebody online this morning that I felt like that the Vallejo was just as good an aluminum just as good an aluminum impersonator. Say that 5 times fast. As all clad, and I think that this pretty well bears that out. You can see that there just isn't much difference either in the tone or the reflectivity, and both of these are sprayed on top of the all clad gloss black enamel base. So that's an apples to apples test right there. You can see same thing here. This part of the fuselage up here is the regular Vallejo aluminum, and this part right here is all clad, and those are both directly just on top of the raw Stynylrez primer. So not a whole lot of difference there either. Now let's take a look on this side. And we've got the AK Extreme Metal Dark Aluminum compared to the Vallejo Dark Aluminum. Duralumin used to be. Most of it is gone now, but you can see that there is a distinct difference in tonality. The AK is equally smooth and I would say just about as reflective, maybe not quite as reflective, but the tone is distinctly different. The Vallejo Dark Aluminum is a warmer tone than the AK is for sure. So, not a huge difference, but definitely something to be aware of there. Okay, gangsters, it's been another 24 hours since we last looked at the Vallejo Metallics test mule. And it's time to do some more fun things to this paint. Now, I know that a lot of people think I'm crazy, but I like to do as much directly on the paint as possible. And in particular, with a bare metal finish where, to me, the idea of putting a clear varnish on it is not my favorite thing because, you know, the thing about clear varnishes is that they look exactly like clear varnishes and not much like metal. So when you're already struggling to get a metallic-like appearance, it seems to me like you may find yourself not putting a varnish on, and that means putting decals directly on the paint, which I know for some people is pure heresy, but I do it and I have good results with it, and so we're going to experiment with that and see how it goes. So I've got these lovely Revell decals, and I'm going to just throw them in my jar of decal water for a second. And while we're letting those things get all loosened up, we need to conduct a comparative tape test because yesterday we sprayed some all-clad on this thing, and we need to see how the tape affects that. So again, without de-tackifying it, I'm going to stick some on there, on the all-clad, and then I'm going to get a piece and stick it directly here onto the AK Extreme Metal section right here, and stick it down there real good. And we're just going to let that sit there for a minute or two because it looks like the decals are lifting off the paper. So, see if I can manage to dig them out of the... well, that did not go well. They lifted off the paper so well that they stayed in the jar. But there's one. And this is like bobbing for apples. Okay, there's another one. All right. So let's see if we can get this done without too much drama. We already have one decal upside down. That's no fun. Upside down and on the not on the wing that I was going to put it on. So this will also be a demonstration in how not to decal. There we go. We only ripped it a little bit by sticking it to the masking tape, but hey, look, you didn't know you could abuse decals this much, did you? All right, so that's a good enough place for that one over there on that wing. And let's see if we can uncurl this other one and put it someplace useful without any major dramas. And I used to think decals were extremely fragile, and they certainly can be. There's no doubt about that. But I have reasons to believe that they are much tougher than we sometimes give them credit for. So, there we go. There is a decal right there on the Vallejo Metallics aluminum that's on top of the just the raw primer. So what I'm going to do is, after I close up the decal water there, let's blot some of the water away. Get that smoothed down. And that's good that it's not wanting to conform to that protrusion right there, because we're about to hit it hard with some Solvaset, which is my favorite decal softener, because Solvaset ain't playing. Solvaset is much stronger than Microsol, and if it's going to affect the paint, if anything is going to affect the paint, Solvaset definitely will. But while we're letting those decals dry for a second, let's yank the tape off of this all-clad. Nope, look at that. I did it all wrong, and the all-clad didn't even flinch. Didn't even blink. Can't even get it to budge. So let's see what happens when we try that sort of abuse with the AK Extreme Metal. Nope. Not going anywhere. So let's up the ante a little bit. Let's try the household masking tape that was so destructive to the other stuff, and see what happens there. And I'll try to get a piece off the roll as quickly as possible here. It's definitely not easy stuff. All right, so we'll stick a piece of it on there real good and flip it over and stick a piece of it over here. All right, so that's good. And uh-oh, I am just losing my mind here. I forgot about that. Forgot about that decal that was supposed to be stuck to the edge or to the side of the fuselage there. That's not good. You're not supposed to do that. So I guess we better stick it back down. I'm sure you guys are having a good laugh over this little circus. All right, anyway, without trying to peel that decal back off. So, ultra masking tape. You can see it peeled a little bit of the stuff right there next to it. That was the vallejo, and it got a little bit of the AK in the same pull. But really, even that masking tape is not doing a whole lot of damage, and it doesn't affect the all-clad either. So, no matter how stupid I get with the masking tape, the all-clad just laughs. Ha ha ha. Well, that's fine, because all-clad, I will see you a household masking tape, and I will raise you a 3M fine line tape. And this is relevant for Mustang builders, which are very often going to be in bare metal finish, because you might want to use something like this 3M fine line tape to lay out a the curved design on the nose or on the tail section. So we're gonna rub that down really nice and firmly, and then flip it over to the other side and do the same thing with the AK. And I won't be at all surprised if some of it comes up with this tape. Okay, so let's see what happens. Not on the all-clad. The all-clad can handle the 3M fine line. There you go. Pretty conclusive. Let's see what happens with the AK. Yep, right there. You can see it. Took a chunk of it off. It's right there on the piece of tape. So I think that this is proven to not only be a good test of what will happen under masking with the Vallejo metallics, but also you got a sort of a bonus and got to see a sort of a relative shootout between all-clad and AK with a quick masking test. All right, now these decals have had enough time to baste, so let's get after them with some Solvaset, and we're not even going to be shy with the Solvaset. And what I'm going to do then is Solvaset, it takes a little while to work its magic. If you guys have ever used it, you know that it's a little scary, because here in just a little while, these decals are going to look like prunes, and it's going to seem impossible that they could ever get right again. But then, a little while after that, they are going to be looking like they were melted into the surface of this paint. And hopefully none of the paint itself is going to be melted. But, right now, I'm brushing it on there, and there's no immediate reaction going on from the paint. Nothing appears to be problematic. What happens if we take some Solvaset and brush it on this all-clad? You know, all-clad is just pretty chemically impervious, which really you should expect that, because once a lacquer dries, you've got a pretty hard, durable shell there. So, not too surprising there. Let's see what happens when we scrub some Solvaset onto the AK. You guys can hear me scrubbing, right? Scrub, scrub, scrub. Nothing happening so far, but we're going to just let that sit there for a while and just we'll marinate. Put some more on that decal. We're going to make sure and get it good and stuck down there. So, all right. So I'm going to go away and do some other things, and when I come back, these decals will be hopefully welded to that surface, and hopefully there will not be any effect on the paint itself. All right, so here we are about 30 minutes later, and we've given these washes some time to dry. Maybe not as much as we'd like to, but enough to enough for the purposes of this test. So, first thing I'm going to do is just take this dry rag here and start rubbing this clay wash off. This stuff will come off if you rub it off dry, but it is much easier if you use a little bit of water. And the effect that you get depends on how much. So I'm going to just take a little bit and put it here on the bench and get this rag a little bit damp, and see what we can do here just to knock this out real quick. All right, so you can see that it does stain a little bit, which is one of the things that I actually like about using something like this clay wash directly on paint, is that it does give you a little bit of a grimy look to it, and that I think is pretty natural. It gives it a little bit of a dirty discoloration, and does it in a relatively random way. So I think that's good. But the bottom line is that, you know, that's just purely up to how you use it. It's not going to hurt the paint no matter what. And I don't expect that the oil wash over here is going to either. And we'll just start wiping that off, and that also is going to discolor a little bit the way that I'm doing it, but that's fine. To me, that's all part of the weathering process, and that's part of how you build character into these surfaces. But the important thing for what we're doing right now is to see that it has no effect whatsoever on the paint. And again, like I was saying earlier, it shouldn't. So there is one more thing that we know we can do directly to the Vallejo metal colors. All right, so even though I would like to be able to put a bare metal finish on without any kind of clear coat on top of it, the fact is that Vallejo makes this metal color airbrush colors gloss metal varnish. Now, they say that this stuff is specifically made to go over the top of these new metallic colors. So we better test it out. Now, just in looking at the stuff in the bottle, I don't see a whole lot of difference between it and any other clear gloss varnish that I've ever used. So, but you never know. You can't judge a book by its cover. So I'm going to just put a little bit in the cup here, and it does say shake well, and I've already done that. That's a little bit different than aqua gloss, which says don't shake it. So at any rate, there's some in there. It says to put it on in light coats, and so that is exactly what I'm gonna do. And I'm still spraying at about 20 psi. I tell you that it smells like some kind of bubble gum or something. Now I can tell you it's not going down real smooth, but maybe it'll level itself out. I don't know. We'll see. It seems to be kind of thick and not going through the airbrush real easily, but that may just be my perception of it. It does look like it's smoothed itself out. So I'm going to spray some over here on this section. It's got some different colors on it. Getting some splatters there, and part of that may be that this spray gun at this point is not super clean, but it is definitely spitting some gobs out there, which is certainly no fun, but you know, if they level themselves out, it's not a big deal. Now, just for comparison's sake, since I've now got the airbrush polluted with clear gloss varnish, I am going to go ahead and spray some aqua gloss on a couple of sections. But I'm going to go over here and rinse this thing out first. Alright, now that I've got that cleaned out, just take a few drops of aqua gloss right there in the cup, and again, now that I'm putting it in the cup, there's nothing that would tell me that aqua gloss is any different from the Vallejo gloss metal varnish. They look exactly the same on the surface. So let's spray some aqua gloss in a couple of places here, and then we'll be able to see what we think about that. Spray gun is definitely filthy. It's been getting a workout the last couple of days, and I confess that I have not done a super good job of cleaning it out because I've been moving fast. But the aqua gloss is going through it easier under whatever condition it's in than that Vallejo stuff did. So we will let that dry, and then we'll come back and take a look at it. Although at this point I can say that the Vallejo stuff is already dry to the touch and does not seem to have changed the complexion of the metal finish all that much, but I'll get a closer look at it and report back soon. Alright, so it's just a few minutes later, about the amount of time it took me to go and get that airbrush cleaned out a little bit, and while I was doing that, I discovered two things. One, that the needle was in fact pretty dirty when I pulled it out, and also that I had forgotten that I had my regulator set to 15 psi from when I was blowing the color samples. So I turned it back up to 20, and I sprayed this whole wing with the Vallejo varnish, and it did spray a lot better. It still didn't go down super smooth, but it levels itself out pretty well, and I think you can see that here. Try to give you some different angles there so you can get an idea of the surface finish, both with and without light shining on it. You know, it really is a pretty nice finish, but I'm not totally sold on whether or not I like the effect of having that gloss on there. It's not immediately bugging me though, so I guess that's a positive thing. This is the other wing, and even as poorly as it sprayed at 15 psi, it did level out pretty well and doesn't look too bad. And but here you can see where definitely I've got some more offensive blobs on there where the thing was really starting to struggle. And so I think that the lesson there is, because you can see more of a sheen there as well, is that if you're going to use the stuff, you should use it very lightly, so that you get just enough on there to give you some protection if you feel like you need it, but not so much that it changes the nature of the finish, because it's pretty clear to me, it may not come through on camera, but it's pretty clear to me looking at it here that if you get too much of that stuff on there, it's going to look exactly like what it is, which is clear acrylic gloss. Now, here's the section where I sprayed the aqua gloss all over that horizontal stabilizer, and on the side of the fuselage there. And I don't know about you guys, but it's tough for me to say that there's a huge difference. The aqua gloss, I think, actually, now that I'm looking at it a little bit more, I think that the aqua gloss is a little glossier. I think that what I might say of the Vallejo is that it might almost be a little more satin. I don't know. It's tough to say. They're very, very close. You guys will have to decide for yourselves. I personally, whoops, sorry about that. I personally am going to try to avoid the issue if I use these paints by not putting on a clear gloss coat at all, because I think we've seen that it's not absolutely necessary. All right, well, there you go. I hope you can see now what I meant when I said that this was going to be an exhaustive review of this product. I wasn't kidding when I said that. I spent quite a few weeks and quite a few hours doing this, and I hope that you guys feel like it was worthwhile and that I did, in fact, do a thorough job. I feel like it was worth my time. Because not only did I enjoy doing it, but I learned a little bit along the way and got some exposure to a new product that I feel like is pretty compelling. So let's get right to it. What is my conclusion after all of this effort? Would I recommend the Vallejo metal color paint line or not? In a word, absolutely, I would. And there are very few qualifiers to that. I think you've probably already gathered from watching the video, if you did get through all of it, what those qualifiers would be. Really, the only major one that I can think of is the masking issue. I know that in some other reviews, it's been said that there was no issue with masking. As you saw in the video, I did not find that to be true. And that can be a real problem, because obviously when you get to the point of pulling off masking tape, you are pretty close to done and you're ready to see the results and not see that you have more work to do in making some kind of crazy repairs. So the masking thing can be a serious issue, but I honestly feel like that if you're careful with it, that if you take the time to detackify your masking tape, that it can be done without problems. You have to decide if that's a fair trade-off for being able to use a paint system that gets you away from any of the issues you might have with lacquers. Honestly, I feel like that the finish that I've seen from this stuff is comparable in every way to what I've seen from All-Clad, which I think everybody would agree is sort of the industry standard. Again, going back to the bench mule, if you look at the two surfaces of the tailplane there, one of them is All-Clad and one of them is Vallejo metal color. And I would challenge you to be able to point out which one is which if you didn't watch the video and already know the answer to that question. So I think from a surface quality standpoint, a pigmentation standpoint, all of those things, that this stuff certainly is the equal of All-Clad and anything else that I've seen out there. There are others that I have not had a chance to test yet. There's a new product line out there called Mr. Paint that looks pretty compelling. So this test is not the be-all, end-all of all metallic paints. It's only meant to be a thorough review of the Vallejo metal color and a little bit of a comparison, as you saw, with All-Clad and AK's Extreme Metal. So with regard to those, let's talk about the relative value. Each one of these will cost you 10 or 11 bucks. That seems expensive, but for what you get, I don't think it's unfair. The bottle of AK that's about the same size will cost you about 12 bucks, so it's a little bit more expensive. This bottle of All-Clad that's about the same size cost me about $9 or $10. So from a cost standpoint, I think that they are all about the same. There are a couple of little things that I like about the Vallejo that really don't have anything to do with the paint itself. One thing I definitely like is this type of bottle. Now, I understand that you can't use this type of a bottle with a lacquer paint and really not even with an enamel because you have evaporation issues. The solvent will actually leach through the plastic. So I can't really ding All-Clad for not having a bottle like this, but I definitely do like the little pour spout. One thing that I do not like is that there's not a mixing ball included in this, the way that there is with other metallic paints. And these really need one. Vallejo doesn't cost you guys much to put a mixing ball in here, and you definitely should do it because getting the pigment off the bottom of these things is a real hassle. I also hate the fact that the label goes all the way around, and it's difficult to see exactly how much paint is left in that bottle. But that's pretty consistent. Everybody does that. I don't understand why it has to be that way. But, that's definitely one of my pet peeves. One thing that you should be aware of, especially if you live at a relatively high altitude like I do, when these bottles are brand new, there's a little bit of pressure in there. And when you pop that lid open, it's a good idea to have a towel underneath you. And definitely don't open it with your teeth. I found out the hard way that paint will come squirting out of there in a big hurry when the bottle is brand new and you open it for the first time. So trust me on that one. Because there's not a safety cap underneath this lid, as I, again, found out the hard way. So that's a story for another time and a lot more beer. So, at any rate, I think that after having said all that in the final analysis, that I personally am going to be using these metal colors. Definitely going to be using them for a lot of small parts. And I think there's a pretty good chance that on my next bare metal finish aircraft project that I probably will also consider, very strongly consider using them as the overall paint finish. I think it's a good product. I'm impressed with Vallejo's effort on this, especially given that I haven't been a big Vallejo fan in the past. So, I guess to use that standard phrase that comes at the end of so many reviews, this stuff is highly recommended. Okay, guys? If you've put up with this whole thing for all nearly 2 hours of it, I definitely appreciate it. I hope you found it informative, and I hope you'll stay tuned for the next adventure. All right? Take care. Much love.